I have been waiting to record this episode because things have been moving at Daystar. And when I tell you the pieces are coming together, the pieces are coming together. Today we are talking about why Doug Weiss is suddenly nowhere to be seen on Daystar. We are talking about Jimmy Evans cutting ties. We are talking about what Joni's last words now reveal in the context of what is happening right now. And we are talking about the possibility, the real documented credible possibility, that Jonathan Lamb is coming back to the ministry his parents built. Let's go. So we start with the headline, because this is the fact that broke open this entire conversation. Confirmed by multiple sources, Doug Weiss is no longer connected with Daystar Television Network. He is gone, cut ties, departed. And not quietly, this has been confirmed publicly. And alongside Doug, Pastor Jimmy Evans, who had been a major influence within Daystar's executive sphere, has also cut ties with the network. Confirmed May and June 2026, the double departure that changed everything at Daystar. Sources close to the network have confirmed that following Joni Lamb's death on May 7th, 2026, the Daystar Board of Directors assumed full operational control of the network. Two major figures immediately departed. Doug Weiss, Joni's husband of roughly 3 years, co-host of Ministry Now, central figure on the network since 2023, gone. Sources describe his exit as a total return to his roots at Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs. He has no remaining role at Daystar. Jimmy Evans, longtime spiritual advisor to the Lamb family, powerful influence within the network's executive sphere, previously entangled in the family dispute involving Jonathan's firing, also gone. No remaining connection to Daystar. The Daystar board has assumed full control. The board is now steering the network, and the people most identified with blocking Jonathan's return, Doug Weiss and his key allies, are no longer in the building. Y'all. Let me just sit with that for a second. The man who married a grieving widow less than 2 years after her husband died. The man who took her to Mexico 4 days before she died. The man who blocked out her phone communications in her final days. The man whose Wikipedia tribute photo was carefully cropped to hide Marcus Lamb's grave. The man whose IRS filings show a $350,000 discrepancy. The man who deleted every negative comment from every social media platform he could moderate. That man is gone from Daystar. The board removed him, or he saw which way the wind was blowing and left. Either way, he is gone. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because I want to talk about why Doug left. More specifically, what he discovered that would have made staying at Daystar impossible for him. Think about this from Doug's perspective for a moment. He came into Joni's life in 2022. Within less than 2 years, he married her. Within another year, he was co-hosting Ministry Now on one of the largest Christian networks in America. He was on camera. He was building a new platform. He had access to the resources, the infrastructure, the audience of a ministry reaching 64 million American homes. That was the prize. That was what Daystar represented for Doug Weiss. A new platform, a new audience, and a new level of public influence. After the IRS problems at his own nonprofit, after the client trauma complaints at Heart to Heart, after the divorce from Lisa, Daystar was his comeback, his reset, his second act, and then the board, after Joni died, started looking at Joni's documented last wishes. And what they found was, Joni reportedly told Tom Calendarer 3 weeks before she died, if Jonathan tries to reach out, give him Daystar. And before that, Marcus Lamb had a succession plan that pointed toward Jonathan. Both parents, both in their final days, pointing the same direction, toward the son, not toward the husband of 3 years. Doug Weiss's grand second act at Daystar was built on a foundation that Joni herself reportedly removed from beneath him in her final weeks. That is not just a disappointment. That is a devastating blow to everything he had positioned himself for. Because here is the mathematical reality. If Jonathan returns to Daystar, with the blessing of both his parents' documented final wishes behind him, Doug Weiss has no seat at that table. None. Jonathan and Susie have been very clear about what they think of Doug Weiss's marriage to Joni. Very clear about the biblical grounds question. Very clear that Doug represented a rupture in the family that they refused to endorse. If Jonathan walks back through that door, Doug is not walking in with him. And Doug knows that. And that is why he is gone. Now let me talk about Jimmy Evans for a second. Because his departure is not just collateral damage. It is significant in its own right, and it tells us something about the direction the board is moving. Jimmy Evans, founder of Exo Marriage, was deeply embedded in the Daystar executive ecosystem. He was the one Joni brought in during the infamous July 11th, 2023 ambush meeting with Jonathan and Susie. He participated in the meeting where Joni reportedly told Jonathan his wife had him by the balls. He was a spiritual authority being weaponized in the conflict against Jonathan. He was on Joni's side, on Doug's side, on the side of everything that pushed Jonathan out. And now, he is also gone. The board, apparently, is not preserving the alliances that Joni and Doug built against Jonathan. They are clearing the decks. They are removing the people most associated with Jonathan's ouster. And whether that is because they have genuinely decided to honor Johnny's last wish, or because they realize that the continued presence of Weiss and Evans would be a donor relations disaster given everything that has come out, either way, the result is the same. The people who blocked Jonathan are gone. And that clears a path. Now, let me lay out why I believe Jonathan Lamb is coming back to Daystar. Not as wishful thinking, not as speculation, but based on the documented evidence of what has been happening since Joni died. 3 weeks before her death, Joni told Tom Calenderer, if Jonathan tries to reach out, give him Daystar. Documented by a credible anonymous source, verified by Julie Roys, corroborated by Jonathan and Susie's own account of Tom's call to them. On Marcus's succession plan, Marcus Lamb, before his death in 2021, had communicated a succession plan that pointed toward Jonathan. Both parents, both in their final days, pointing the same direction. On Jonathan's statement, learning that my mother's dying wish was for me to return to leadership at Daystar is both healing and deeply confirming. I am hopeful that the board will honor what my mother asked for and what my father asked for before her. Doug Weiss, gone. The man whose presence was the primary obstacle to Jonathan's return has cut ties with Daystar. The board confirmed his exit after Joni's death. Jimmy Evans, gone. The man who participated in the weaponized spiritual ambush against Jonathan in July 2023 is also no longer connected with Daystar. Boards has assumed full operational control of the network after Joni's death. They, not Rachel, are now the governing authority. And the board includes people who know what both Marcus and Joni wanted. And on donor pressure, dozens of broadcast ministries have already left Daystar over the controversy. The network needs credibility and stability. Jonathan returning, with the documented blessing of both founders, would be the single most credible act of restoration Daystar could make. Y'all, every single one of those data points moves in the same direction. The obstacles are gone. The documented wishes are clear. The board has the authority. Jonathan is willing. The only people who want to stop it are Rachel and Rebecca. And even Rebecca, remember, showed signs of wanting to do the right thing in that second police interview. It is Rachel. It is Josh Brown. It is the fear of what Jonathan's return means for the abuse allegations against Josh. That is the last remaining obstacle. And even that obstacle cannot override the documented final wishes of both Daystar founders. Now let me talk about the big picture of what Doug Weiss attempted and why it failed, because this is a story about ambition meeting God's purpose. And as usual, ambition lost. What Doug Weiss came to Daystar to build: a new platform reaching 64 million homes, a co-host seat on Ministry Now, alignment with a major Christian media empire, distance from the IRS problems and heart-to-heart complaints, a second act with a new audience who didn't know the baggage, positioned as Joni's husband, with whatever inheritance and influence that brought. What actually happened? Joni died, reportedly telling Tom Calenderer to give the network to Jonathan. The board assumed control and removed Doug. His IRS discrepancies were exposed. His heart-to-heart trauma clients went public. The Mexico questions are unanswered. The gravestone says Lamb, not Weiss. Back at heart-to-heart and Jonathan. The man Doug's presence was designed to replace is coming back. God does not play. I want to be measured here. I genuinely don't know Doug Weiss's heart. I genuinely don't know if he loved Joni, or if he was calculating the whole time. I am not inside his motivations, but I can read the fruit. And the fruit is, a man who positioned himself at the center of a major Christian ministry is now gone. His platform is gone. The ministry he tried to inherit is moving toward honoring the wishes of the founders he displaced. And the man he displaced is coming back. Proverbs 19, verse 21. Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Many plans in a person's heart, but the Lord's purpose prevails, not the person's plan, not the person's positioning, not the person's carefully attached social media presence or their cropped gravestone photo. The Lord's purpose. And the Lord's purpose, documented in the reported final words of two founders, is pointing toward Jonathan Lamb. Now let me talk practically about what Jonathan's potential return means. Because this is not just a family reconciliation story. This is a governance story. This is a donor trust story. This is a ministry integrity story. Daystar has been hemorrhaging credibility since scandals broke in November 2024. Dozens of broadcast ministries have left the network. Viewers have been watching in horror as the behind-the-scenes realities emerged. The IRS financial questions, the child abuse cover-up allegations, the Wikipedia edits, the Mexico questions about Joni's final days, the communion service where Rachel Arnold Torres and Steve Wilhite crowned themselves. All of it on the record. All of it damaging the network's credibility with every passing week. Jonathan Lamb returning, with a documented blessing of both his parents' final wishes, would be the most powerful act of course correction Daystar could make. It would be a signal to donors that the network is honoring its founding family's legacy. It would be a signal to broadcast ministry partners that leadership is being restored to someone with actual calling and character investment in the mission. And it would be a signal to the broader Christian community that, even in the mess of all that went wrong, the right thing is being done. But, and here's my honest word to Jonathan, returning to Daystar cannot just be about getting back what was taken. It has to be about genuine accountability, about opening the books, about filing the financial disclosures that should have been filed for years, about establishing independent oversight, about caring for the women who gave their widow's mites to a network that never told them how their money was spent. That is the work of genuine restoration, not just a title, not just a seat at the table. Restoration. Let me close with something that has been in my spirit since I started following this saga. Isaiah 61 verse 7. Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance. Jonathan and Susie Lamb received shame. They received disgrace. They were fired, GPS tracked, publicly shamed at a funeral, erased from a slideshow, kept from a dying mother, found out she was dead 10 minutes before a social media post. Isaiah 61 verse 7. Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance. And so you will inherit a double portion in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. A double portion, and everlasting joy in your inheritance. Y'all, I am not a prophet. I am not saying this is guaranteed, but I am saying the arc of this story, when you look at it honestly, is bending toward Jonathan. The obstacles are being removed. The voices that opposed him are departing. The documented wishes of his parents are on the record. And God, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, is still the God who honors what is right, who brings down what is built in deception, and who restores what was taken by injustice. Jonathan, if you're ever listening to this, we see you. We have been watching. We have been praying. You stood for truth when it cost you everything. You protected your daughter when it destroyed your career. You pursued reconciliation even while being treated as an outcast. That is character. That is called. And God does not forget that. Until next time, stay rooted. Stay in the Word. Because this one might have a good ending. God bless y'all. Peace.